The dim glow of a street lamp flickered over the cracked sidewalk of a forgotten industrial park on the outskirts of Milford, where the air hung heavy with the scent of rust and rain-soaked asphalt. It was just past midnight, and the world felt like it was holding its breath. 12-year-old Noah huddled against the cold metal flank of a parked Harley-Davidson, his small hands trembling as he clutched a jagged piece of broken glass scavenged from the gutter. His clothes were torn, mud streaked from a frantic run through the back alleys, and his face bore the fresh bruises of a nightmare he couldn't outpace. Alone, terrified, with nowhere left to turn, he dragged the glass across the bike's leather saddlebag, carving shallow, desperate letters into the hide, SOS. Each stroke was a silent scream, a plea etched into the night, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would see it before the shadows swallowed him whole. The boy glanced over his shoulder, heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. He'd been running for hours, ever since the argument at home escalated into something darker, something that left him fleeing into the unknown. His stepfather's voice still echoed in his mind, slurred and menacing, promising worse if he ever came back. Noah's mother was gone, lost to illness 2 years prior, and now this man, this intruder in their fragile life, had crossed a line Noah couldn't forgive. The carved SOS wasn't just a cry for help, it was a spark of defiance, a mark that said he existed, that he mattered, even if the world had forgotten him. Miles away, in a dimly lit garage bathed in the harsh fluorescence of overhead bulbs, Ethan Ridge Harlan wiped grease from his calloused hands with a rag that had seen better days. At 42, Ethan was a man forged in the fires of regret, broad-shouldered, with a salt-and-pepper beard framing a face etched by sun and sorrow. His iron viper's patch gleamed on the worn leather of his vest, a symbol of the brotherhood that had become his anchor after the war chewed him up and spat him out. He'd parked his bike earlier that evening after a long ride, intending to crash at his buddy's place nearby. But sleep evaded him, haunted by the ghost of a promise made decades ago under a desert sky, to protect the innocent no matter the cost. Little did he know that oath was about to roar back to life. Ethan stepped out into the chill, the gravel crunching under his boots as he approached his Harley. The engine's residual warmth still lingered, a faint comfort against the encroaching fog. He swung a leg over the seat, fingers brushing the saddlebag out of habit, then froze. There, illuminated by the faint moonlight, were the scratches, SOS, raw and urgent like a wound on the leather. His breath caught, a chill racing down his spine that had nothing to do with the weather. Who would do this? A kid, maybe. The letters were uneven, childlike. Ethan's mind flashed to his own son, lost to a roadside tragedy years back, and a fierce protectiveness surged through him. He scanned the shadows, the empty lot suddenly alive with possibility. "Hey!" he called out, voice gravelly but steady. "Kid, you out there?" From behind a rusted dumpster, Noah peeked out, eyes wide with a mix of fear and fragile hope. He hadn't expected anyone to come so soon, or at all. The big man on the bike looked intimidating, tattoos snaking up his arms like ancient runes. But there was something in his eyes, a quiet resolve that didn't match the biker stereotype. Noah stepped forward hesitantly, the glass shard slipping from his fingers to clatter on the ground. I didn't mean to mess up your bike," he stammered, voice barely above a whisper. I needed help." Ethan dismounted slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening, like approaching a skittish colt. He crouched to Noah's level, the scent of motor oil and leather mingling with the boy's faint, acrid fear sweat. "Easy there, son. Name's Ethan. You in trouble?" Noah nodded, tears welling as the weight of the night crashed down. In halting words, he spilled it, the yelling, the threats, the way his stepfather's hands had gripped too tight, leaving marks that burned like accusations. Ethan's jaw tightened, a storm brewing behind his calm facade. He'd seen too many kids like this, caught in the crossfire of broken homes, and it ignited that old promise, the one he'd made to his fallen comrade: stand for the voiceless. "Listen to me," Ethan said, his voice low and reassuring, like the rumble of a well-tuned engine. "You're safe now. We're going to get you out of this." He pulled off his jacket, draping it over the boy's shivering shoulders. It swallowed Noah whole, the leather heavy but warm, carrying the faint aroma of freedom, open roads and endless horizons. Ethan fired up his phone, dialing a number from memory. His crew's medic, a no-nonsense nurse named Grace, who'd patched up more than just bullet wounds. "Grace, it's Ridge. Got a situation. Young kid, signs of rough handling. Meet me at the old diner on Route 17. As the engine of the Harley thrummed to life, a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the night, Noah climbed on behind Ethan, clutching the man's waist with tentative trust. The bike leaned into the first turn, tires biting into the wet pavement, leaving the industrial park and the carved SOS fading in the rear view. But this was just the beginning. Ethan's mind raced ahead, gears turning like pistons. He knew the stepfather, a lowlife named Victor, who'd tangled with the Vipers before, dodging real justice through slick lawyers and empty threats. Calling in the crew wasn't just backup, it was invoking the code, the unbreakable bond of the Iron Vipers. 50 strong, they'd ride for one of their own, or for a kid who'd marked his bike like a beacon. The wind whipped past as they sped toward the neon glow of the diner, its sign buzzing like a distant heartbeat. Inside, Grace waited, her sharp eyes assessing Noah the moment they walked in. She guided him to a booth, offering a hot chocolate that steamed with comfort, while Ethan stepped outside to make another call. "Samuel, it's me. We got a boy in peril. Victor's at it again. Rally the brothers. Dawn ride. Full convoy." On the other end, Samuel's voice crackled with loyalty. "On it, Ridge. For the promise." By the time the first hints of sunrise painted the sky in bruised purples, word had spread like wildfire through the Viper's network. Ethan watched from the diner's window as Noah sipped his drink, the boy's guarded expression softening for the first time. This intervention wasn't random. It was fate's cruel poetry, pulling Ethan from his solitary drift into a fight that would test every scar, every secret. The carved SOS had awakened something dormant, a redemption arc written in chrome and resolve. As the crew's engines began to echo in the distance, converging like thunder, Ethan knew this ride would change everything. For the boy, for the club, for the man who'd almost forgotten what honor felt like. What if you subscribe now, so you never miss the next twist in this tale of grit and grace? Hit that button and let's ride on together. The neon sign of the Route 17 diner hummed like a weary sentinel against the pre-dawn haze, its pink and blue glow casting elongated shadows across the parking lot gravel. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of fresh coffee brewing and sizzling bacon, a stark contrast to the chill that still clung to Noah's bones. He sat in the corner booth, Ethan's oversized jacket draped over him like a shield, its leather creaking softly with each uneasy shift. Grace, a woman in her mid-30s with steady hands and eyes that had witnessed too many hidden hurts, knelt beside him, her voice a gentle anchor in the storm of his recounting. "Tell me what happened, sweetheart," she said, her tone measured, like unwrapping a fragile package. Noah's fingers twisted the edge of a napkin, shredding it into confetti as words tumbled out in fits and starts. The arguments that started small, money troubles, late nights, but grew into thunderclaps of rage. Victor's temper, fueled by bottles hidden in the garage, had always simmered. But last night, it boiled over. A shove here, a grip there, leaving Noah scrambling out the back door into the rain-slicked streets. "He said if I told anyone, it'd be worse," Noah whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. Grace nodded, her medic's kit open on the table, subtly checking for signs of strain without pressing too hard. No broken bones, but the emotional fractures ran deep, etched like the SOS on Ethan's saddlebag. Outside, Ethan paced the lot, the gravel biting into his boots as he ended the call with Samuel. The Iron Vipers weren't just a club, they were a covenant, forged in the crucible of shared battles, some on foreign sands, others in the quiet wars of everyday survival. Samuel Forge Riley, a burly ex-Marine with a laugh like rolling thunder, had been Ethan's right hand since their days dodging IEDs in the dust-choked valleys overseas. "Crews mobilizing, Ridge," Samuel had said, his voice steady over the line. 20 already geared up at the warehouse. Victor's got no idea the storm coming his way. Ethan hung up, staring into the murky horizon, where the first sliver of sun clawed its way free. Victor, a weasel of a man who'd wormed his way into the widow's life after Noah's mom passed, then poisoned it with his vices. Ethan had crossed paths with him once, years back, when Victor tried shaking down a local shop for protection money the Vipers wouldn't tolerate. The club had scared him off then, but grudges like his festered. A low rumble pierced the quiet, growing into a symphony of exhaust and steel as the first wave of bikes crested the rise. Headlights sliced through the fog like search beams, illuminating the diner in staccato flashes. Noah pressed his face to the window, eyes widening at the sight. A dozen Harleys pulling in formation, riders dismounting with the precision of old soldiers. Their vests bore the Viper emblem, a coiled serpent around a shield symbolizing vigilance and unbreakable bonds. Leading them was Samuel, his bald head gleaming under the emerging light, followed by Jonathan "Hawk" Ellis, a wiry veteran whose sharpshooter's gaze missed nothing, and a few others, Tyler, the young mechanic with grease perpetually under his nails, and William Bear Grant, whose massive frame belied a heart soft as fresh-tilled earth. Ethan met them at the door, clasping forearms in silent greetings that spoke volumes. "Boys inside with grace," he murmured, voice low to keep the diner's lone night shift cook from eavesdropping. "Rough night for him. Victor's crossed the line, marks on the kid, threats that stick." Samuel's face hardened, the lines around his eyes deepening like cracks in parched ground. "We ride for family, blood or chosen," he replied, echoing the creed they'd sworn under that desert moon when Ethan had pulled Samuel from a burning Humvee, promising they'd watch each other's backs till the end. That vow had carried them home, binding the club in threads stronger than chain link. They filed in quietly, the booth becoming a council of war. Noah shrank back at first, the influx of leather and muscle overwhelming, but Grace's reassuring hand on his shoulder steadied him. "These are Ethan's brothers," she explained. "Good men, Noah. They protect their own." Samuel crouched down, his voice a gravelly warmth. "Heard you left a message on Ridge's bike. Smart move, kid. Bravest thing I've seen in a while." A flicker of pride crossed Noah's face, the first crack in his fear armor. As Grace continued her quiet assessment, offering water, noting how the boy's hands shook less now, Ethan laid out the plan. No guns, no brawls. The Vipers operated on a code of moral thunder, not blind fury. They'd confront Victor at dawn, at his rundown auto shop on the edge of town, where he fancied himself king of the scraps, witnesses from the club, a call to the local shelter run by a Viper ally, and enough presence to make any lies crumble under scrutiny. The sun breached the horizon fully now, bathing the diner in golden hues that turned the chrome on the bikes outside into mirrors of resolve. Ethan watched Noah interact tentatively with Tyler, who pulled out a deck of cards from his pocket, dealing a simple game to distract the boy. It was these moments, the quiet acts of solidarity, that rebuilt what the world tore down. But beneath the calm, tension coiled like a spring. Victor wasn't alone. He had cronies, shady types who'd look the other way for a cut. and Ethan's own past whispered doubts. The accident that took his son, the guilt that kept him riding solo until now. This ride wasn't just for Noah, it was Ethan's reckoning, honoring the promise to stand for the innocent, to be the shield he'd failed to be once. As the crew fueled up on coffee and resolve, engines idling like impatient beasts, Grace pulled Ethan aside. "He's tough but fragile," she said, glancing at Noah. "Whatever happens, he needs to see justice done right, not vengeance." Ethan nodded, the weight of it settling like dust on his shoulders. "That's the Viper way," he replied. "Truth over fists." With that, they mounted up, Noah secured on a sidecar rigged by William, the convoy forming a steel river ready to flow toward confrontation. The air vibrated with purpose, the scent of exhaust mingling with dew-kissed earth, a sensory prelude to the moral storm ahead. As they rolled out, tires humming on the warming asphalt, Ethan glanced back at the diner fading in the mirrors. The carved SOS had ignited a chain reaction, pulling threads of loyalty from the shadows. But dawn brought clarity, and with it, the first real test of their bond. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy thundered down Route 17 like a living beast, engines roaring in unison, a symphony of defiance against the quiet surrender of the waking town. Sunlight slanted through the thinning fog, gilding the chrome accents on the Harleys and casting long shadows that danced across the roadside ditches. Ethan led the pack, his grip firm on the handlebars, the wind tearing at his vest as if trying to strip away the years of solitude. Behind him, Noah rode in the sidecar attached to William's bike, the boy's knuckles white on the edge of the wicker frame, eyes darting between the blurring landscape and the wall of leather-clad guardians encircling them. The air rushed past, carrying the sharp tang of pine from the encroaching woods and the metallic bite of exhaust, a reminder that this was no joyride, but a pilgrimage toward reckoning. Samuel rode flank, his massive frame cutting through the breeze like a battleship, while Jonathan scanned the horizon with the vigilance of a hawk on the hunt. Tyler and the others formed the rear, their bikes humming with restrained power, a phalanx bound not by blood, but by oaths whispered in the dead of night. Grace had stayed behind at the diner, coordinating with a trusted contact at the local aid center, a quiet woman named Olivia who'd seen her share of fractured lives and knew how to navigate the system's tangled webs without leaving scars. "Keep it clean," she'd urged Ethan before they left, her words lingering like the steam from her coffee cup. "Justice isn't about breaking, it's about mending what was bent." As Milford's outskirts gave way to the sagging chain-link fences of the industrial sprawl, Ethan's thoughts churned like gravel under tires. Victor's auto shop squatted on the edge of this forgotten zone, a ramshackle empire of oil stains and rusted hulks, where he lorded over junked cars and desperate souls looking for quick fixes. Ethan had ridden past it countless times, ignoring the pull of old grudges, but today it loomed like a spectre. The promise from the desert echoed in his mind, the one he'd made to his comrade Jake, as they huddled in a foxhole under starless skies. "We look out for the little guys, brother. No one gets left in the dirt." Jake hadn't made it home, but Ethan had carried that vow like a talisman, letting it guide the Vipers through bar fights and bad debts. Now, it pulled him toward a confrontation that tested its mettle. The shop came into view, its faded sign creaking in the breeze. "Victor's Repairs. We fix what breaks." A handful of cars dotted the lot, but the place felt hollow, like a drum beaten too many times. Victor's pickup was there, splashed with mud from last night's rain, and a couple of his cronies lounged against the wall, cigarettes dangling from lazy fingers. They straightened as the convoy slowed, engines cutting to a guttural idle that vibrated the ground like an earthquake's prelude. Noah's breath hitched in the sidecar, his small frame tensing as William killed the motor and helped him out, one massive hand gentle on the boy's shoulder. "Stay close, kid," William murmured, his voice a low rumble of reassurance. "Bears protect their cubs." Ethan dismounted first, boots hitting the gravel with purposeful thuds. The vipers fanned out behind him, not aggressive but unyielding, a wall of resolve that spoke louder than shouts. Victor emerged from the shop's gloom, wiping his hands on a grease rag, his face twisting into a sneer that didn't quite mask the flicker of unease in his eyes. Mid-40s, paunchy from too many nights at the bottle, he carried the air of a man who'd talked his way out of corners before. "Harlan," he drawled, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "What's this? Your circus roll into town?" His gaze snagged on Noah, and the sneer faltered, replaced by a shadow of calculation. "Boy, you run off again? Told you to get your ass home." Noah shrank against William, but Ethan's voice cut through, steady as rebar. "This ain't about running, Victor. It's about stopping. The kid's got marks that tell a story, one you wrote." He nodded toward Noah, who lifted his sleeve just enough to reveal the fading bruises. Purple blooms against pale skin. The cronies shifted, exchanging glances, but Samuel's glare pinned them like stakes. "We know your game," Samuel added, stepping forward, his presence filling the space like smoke. "Threats in the dark, hands where they don't belong. But the vipers see through the fog." Victor's laugh was forced, echoing off the shop's corrugated walls, but sweat beaded on his brow despite the warming sun. "You got no proof, biker trash. Kid's a liar, always has been since his mom kicked it. Social services, they got bigger fish." He jabbed a finger at Noah, but Jonathan moved like a shadow, intercepting the gesture with a calm hand on Victor's wrist. "Easy," Jonathan said, his voice silk over steel. "We're not here for blood, just truth. And we've got witnesses, plenty, who've seen your temper flare before. The shelter's waiting, and so's the law, the real kind." Tension coiled in the air, thick as the oil fumes rising from the lot. One crony muttered something low, reaching toward his pocket, but Tyler's sharp eyes caught it and he shook his head, a silent warning that rippled through the group. Ethan felt the old pull, the temptation to let fists answer the injustice, but he reined it in, remembering Grace's words, Jake's vow. This was redemption's path, not shattering the corrupt, but exposing it to the light. "Call it in," Ethan told Samuel, who already had his phone out, dialing Olivia. As the line connected, Victor's facade cracked further, his eyes darting like a cornered animal's. "You think this ends it? I'll bury you all in court." But Noah's voice, small yet piercing, broke the standoff. "You promised Mom you'd take care of me," he said, stepping forward with William's encouragement, his chin lifting in quiet defiance. "But you lied. Every night." The words hung there, a moral indictment sharper than any blade, and Victor deflated, shoulders slumping as the weight of his own broken oaths pressed down. The vipers didn't cheer, they simply stood, a chosen family witnessing the unraveling of falsehoods. Olivia's voice crackled over the speaker, confirming a safe pickup for Noah and a welfare check that would unravel Victor's empire of excuses. As the first patrol car crested the distant road, summoned not by force, but by the unyielding truth of testimony, Ethan placed a hand on Noah's shoulder, the boy's tension easing under the touch. The sun climbed higher, burning off the last fog, illuminating the path ahead. This confrontation was a pivot, a thread in the tapestry of loyalty that bound them all. But shadows lingered. Victor's connections ran deeper than the shop's oily underbelly, and Ethan's past held secrets that could fracture the ride. The engines fired up again, a chorus of resolve, carrying Noah towards safety while the vipers escorted, guardians in the daylight. Yet in Ethan's chest the promise burned brighter, whispering that the true storm was just gathering force. The patrol car's lights pulsed like a reluctant heartbeat against the morning haze, pulling into Victor's lot with the deliberate slowness of authority catching up to chaos. Dust swirled in its wake, settling on the Viper's bikes like a fine grit of unfinished business. Ethan watched from his saddle, engine idling low, the vibration humming through his bones as the officer, a grizzled man named Lucas with a badge that gleamed more from polish than pride, stepped out, clipboard in hand. Olivia had prepped him well. No sirens, no spectacle, just the quiet machinery of procedure grinding into motion. Victor stood deflated against the shop wall, his cronies scattering like roaches under sudden light, mumbling excuses as they slunk toward their rides. Noah clung to William's side, the sidecar now empty but the boy's eyes still wide, absorbing the scene like a sponge in a downpour. The bruises on his arm caught the officer's gaze immediately, a silent exhibit in the court of daylight. "Son," Lucas said, his voice gravelly from too many smokes and not enough sleep, crouching to Noah's level with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this dance before. "You want to tell me what happened here?" Noah hesitated, glancing at Ethan for the anchor he'd found in the night. A nod from the biker was all it took. Words spilled again, steadier now, laced with the raw truth that had carved the SOS. Victor shifted, opening his mouth for denial, but Samuel's unyielding stare silenced him, a wall of loyalty thicker than any lawyer's spin. The officer jotted notes, the pen scratching like claws on paper, while Olivia arrived in her unassuming sedan, pulling up with the soft crunch of tires on gravel. She was a vision of calm efficiency, mid-40s, with hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail and eyes that held the warmth of hearths long cold. As a volunteer at the aid center, she'd navigated these waters for years, turning whispers of harm into records that stuck. "I've got a statement from the diner staff," she said to Lucas, handing over a folder crisp with details. "And Grace's initial assessment, this isn't isolated. Patterns match reports from neighbors." Victor's face paled, the fight draining like oil from a punctured tank. He muttered about misunderstandings, about a boy's wild imagination. But the evidence stacked against him. Witnesses from the Vipers, the marks on Noah, the history Olivia unearthed like buried shrapnel. Ethan dismounted, boots thudding softly as he approached, keeping his distance to let the process unfold without the shadow of intimidation. The air carried the acrid tang of cooling engines mixed with the faint, earthy scent of the nearby woods, a reminder that life pushed on beyond this pit of rust and regret. "We're just here to see it right," he told Lucas, voice low and even, echoing the creed that bound his brothers. The officer nodded, recognizing the Viper's reputation, not as outlaws, but as the unspoken enforcers of moral lines the law sometimes blurred. "Appreciate the escort," Lucas replied. "Kids heading to the center with Ms. Reynolds here. We'll handle the rest." As Olivia guided Noah toward her car, the boy paused, turning back to Ethan with eyes that mirrored a gratitude too deep for 12 years. You kept your word," he said, the words hanging like morning mist. Ethan knelt, the leather of his knees creaking, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, firm, paternal, mending a fracture in his own soul. "Promised I'd stand for you. Now you stand tall, hear me? This family's got your back always." Noah nodded, a spark igniting in his gaze, the first bloom of trust after thorns. He climbed into the passenger seat, the door clicking shut like a vow sealed, and Olivia drove off slowly, taillights fading into the sun-dappled road. The Vipers lingered as Lucas cuffed Victor, loose enough for procedure, tight enough for emphasis, loading him into the cruiser without fanfare. No cheers erupted. Victory here was quiet, a poetic justice woven from truth rather than blows. Jonathan lit a cigarette, the flame flickering like a signal fire, while Tyler tinkered with a loose mirror on his bike, the metallic clink a rhythmic underscore to the unfolding. Samuel clapped Ethan's back, his grip a brotherly anchor. "You pulled him from the dark, Ridge. Jake'd be proud." The name hit like a gut punch, stirring ghosts Ethan had ridden hard to outpace. Jake, his desert brother, lost to an ambush that left Ethan scarred and swearing that oath under blood-red sands: protect the vulnerable, honor the fragile. It had shaped the club, turning lone wolves into a pack, but Ethan's guilt over his son had kept him on the fringes until Noah's SOS dragged him center stage. With Victor secured and the lot emptying, the convoy reformed, engines coughing to life in a staggered roar that echoed off the skeletal frames of junked cars. They rode out in loose formation, not toward home, but to the aid center on the town's quieter edge, a squat building ringed by oaks that whispered secrets to the wind. The road wound through Milford's heart, past shuttered factories and picket-fenced yards awakening to the day, the sun climbing to warm the chill from their leathers. Ethan led, wind streaming tears from his eyes, not from speed but from the release of a burden half-carried for years. Behind him William rumbled alongside, sharing a glance that needed no words. Chosen family forged in fire. At the center, Olivia met them in the parking lot. Noah already inside with a counselor, sipping juice and sketching what might be the first safe lines of his story. "He's settling," she said, her smile a rare crack in the professional facade. "Thanks to you all. This'll stick. Welfare's involved. Full investigation." Ethan nodded, the weight lifting like fog burned away, but a shadow lingered in his periphery. Victor's cronies had peeled off too smoothly, their glances promising ripples, and Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from an old contact. "Heard about the shop. Watch your six. Deeper ties." The promise extended beyond one boy. Corruption's roots ran under the town's veins, testing the Viper's bond like never before. As the crew milled, sharing nods and low murmurs, Ethan felt the pull of the road ahead, more rides, more reckonings. Redemption wasn't a single dawn, it was the endless horizon, chrome-bright and unyielding. Samuel revved his engine, a call to move, and they mounted up, the growl of Harleys a testament to loyalty's roar. Noah watched from the window, waving tentatively, a bridge built in the night. But as they rolled out, Ethan sensed the gathering clouds, not weather, but the ethical storm of secrets unearthed, forcing him to confront his own buried oaths. The ride continued, engines singing of honor's quiet thunder. If this chapter stirred something in you, hit that like button. It fuels the stories that bind us all. The midday sun beat down on the aid center's modest parking lot like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage that distorted the Viper's bikes into ghostly silhouettes. Ethan cut his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the distant hum of traffic on Milford's main drag. A lifeline to the ordinary world, they were reshaping one act at a time. He swung off the Harley, boots scraping the gravel as he scanned the building's facade. Plain brick walls, etched with years of quiet desperation, windows framed by curtains that fluttered like hesitant breaths. Inside, Noah was safe for now, but Ethan's gut twisted with the unease of unfinished roads. The text from his old contact burned in his pocket like a smouldering ember, deeper ties. Victor's web wasn't solitary. It snaked through the town's underbelly, touching palms in places the law pretended not to see. Samuel pulled up beside him, killing his motor with a throaty sigh, his broad frame dismounting like a mountain settling. "Ridge, you look like you swallowed thunder," he said, voice low, eyes flicking to the center's door where Olivia had vanished with the boy. The air hung heavy with the scent of sun-baked tar and wild honeysuckle from the bordering oaks, a deceptive sweetness masking the tension coiling in Ethan's chest. He pulled out the phone, showing Samuel the message without a word. The ex-Marine's jaw set, lines carving deeper into his weathered face. "Cronies, or worse?" Samuel muttered, rubbing his chin, the stubble rasping like sandpaper. They'd faced shadows before, shakedowns by crooked officials, favors traded in back rooms. But this felt personal, a ripple from Victor's arrest, threatening to swamp the whole convoy. Jonathan joined them, his lean form slipping off his bike with the grace of a predator at rest, cigarette smoke trailing from his lips like a question mark. "Heard the chatter on the radio scanner back at the shop," he said, exhaling a plume that danced in the heat. "Lucas is solid, but dispatch mentioned a hold-up on the welfare report. Someone upstairs pulling strings." Tyler and William clustered closer, the group forming a tight circle amid the idling heat of their machines, engines ticking as they cooled. The Viper's emblem on their vests caught the light, serpents coiling protectively, a visual oath against the encroaching doubt. Ethan felt the weight of Jake's promise pressing down, the desert vow evolving into this moment. Not just saving one kid, but shielding a fragile trust from institutional rot. "Can't leave it hanging," Ethan replied, his voice a gravelly anchor. "Noah's just the spark. If Victor's got hooks in the system, we cut 'em clean." He glanced at the center, where through the window he caught a glimpse of Noah, seated at a table, crayons in hand, sketching lines that might map a future unscarred. The boy's tentative wave from earlier lingered in Ethan's mind, a fragile bridge built on that midnight SOS. Grace pulled into the lot then, her nurse's scrubs crisp against the day's glare, pulling a thermos from her car with the efficiency of someone who'd bandaged more than flesh. "Olivia says he's talking more," she reported, pouring coffee into battered mugs passed around the circle. The steam rose, carrying notes of dark roast and vanilla, a brief ritual of solidarity. But the counsellors noting delays in processing the intake, paperwork vanishing, questions about jurisdiction. Samuel's fist clenched around his mug, knuckles whitening like bleached bone. "Corruptions stink," he growled, "like that time in '09 when the sheriff's deputy buried a veteran's claim for a bribe." Memories flickered among them, nights spent riding out to pressure points, not with threats but with the unyielding weight of their presence, forcing truths into the open. William nodded, his massive shoulders shifting. "We ride to the station. Show face. Remind 'em justice don't bend for backroom deals." The plan formed in murmurs, a tactical weave of loyalty. Jonathan on recon, slipping into records with his network of old contacts. Tyler handling any mechanical alibis if tails followed. Grace coordinating medical affidavits that no clerk could ignore. As the sun arced toward afternoon, casting elongated shadows that stretched like fingers across the lot, Ethan felt the pull of his own secrets stirring. The accident that claimed his son, a foggy highway, a split-second swerve, hadn't just broken him, it had forged walls around the promise, making him question if he deserved to lead this charge. But Noah's carved plea had cracked those walls, flooding light into the doubts. They mounted up, engines igniting in a staggered chorus that rumbled through the quiet lot, vibrating the aid center's windows. Olivia stepped out briefly, nodding approval. "Be careful," she said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd seen good intentions twisted. "The boy's asking for you, Ethan," said the biker with the beard kept his word. The convoy peeled out, a steel serpent winding through Milford's veins, past the diner where dawn had broken, the industrial park where desperation had etched leather. The road to the station cut through the town's core, where faded billboards touted community first in peeling letters, ironic against the undercurrents of favoritism. Ethan led, wind whipping his beard, the rush of air cleansing yet sharpening his resolve. Samuel flanked left, Jonathan right, their bikes humming in sync, tires gripping the sun-warmed blacktop. The scent of exhaust mingled with roadside wildflowers. A sensory underscore to the building suspense. At the station, a squat concrete bunker ringed by patrol cars, they pulled in formation, not blocking but present, a visual testament to the moral force gathering. Inside, through the glass doors, Ethan spotted Lucas at a desk piled with files, his brow furrowed over a phone. The officer looked up as the Vipers approached, waving them in with a mix of wariness and relief. "Harlan," he greeted, voice hushed amid the buzz of fluorescent lights and ringing lines. "Victor's singing a different tune now. Claims the kid's unstable, family history. But upstairs, the captain's dragging feet. Old ties to Victor's crew." Ethan's blood simmered, but he kept it banked, leaning on the counter with measured calm. "We got statements, Grace's notes, the boy's word. Don't let strings pull this under." Jonathan slipped to a side office, murmuring into his phone, while Samuel loomed like a sentinel, his presence alone enough to thicken the air. Lucas sighed, rubbing his temples, the weight of the badge evident in his slumped posture. "Appreciate the nudge. I'll push it through channels." But as they filed out, a slick-suited figure emerged from an inner door. Captain Harlan, no relation but a name that twisted like a knife, his smile oily as engine sludge. "Bikers playing hero?" he drawled, eyes narrowing on Ethan. "This town's got rules." The challenge hung, a psychological gauntlet, testing the Viper's restraint. Ethan met his gaze, the promise steeling him. "Rules bend for the innocent. We're just making sure they don't break." Outside, as engines revved anew, Ethan felt the ethical tension ratchet tighter, deeper ties meaning potential betrayal within the club, or shadows from his past resurfacing. The ride back carried urgency, the sun dipping lower, painting the sky in hues of amber and resolve. Noah's safety was the linchpin, but unraveling the corruption demanded more than chrome. It required the unyielding heart of chosen kin. Samuel's voice crackled over helmet comms. "We hold the line, brothers, for the kid, for the oath." The convoy thundered on, a force of quiet thunder toward horizons where redemption's fire burned hottest. The amber light of late afternoon stretched across Milford's main street like liquid gold spilling from a cracked chalice, turning the Viper's convoy into a procession of shadowed guardians as they rolled back toward the aid center. Ethan throttled down at a red light, the Harley's engines settling into a low purr that vibrated through his gloves, syncing with the pulse of unease in his veins. The confrontation at the station lingered like exhaust fumes, Captain Harlan's oily smirk, the way his eyes had lingered on the Iron Viper's patch as if measuring its threat. Deeper ties, the text had warned, and now it felt like roots twisting underfoot, threatening to trip the whole ride. Samuel rode close on his left, the big man's posture rigid, wind tugging at his vest as if urging him to charge ahead. Behind them, Jonathan weaved through the formation, his bike's lean a silent signal. Eyes open, no surprises. The air rushed past, carrying the faint, salty tang of the nearby river mingled with the sharper bite of cooling metal from the bikes. Ethan glanced in his mirror, catching Tyler's focused gaze, the young mechanic's hands steady on the bars, despite the sweat beading on his brow from the day's building heat. William brought up the rear, his massive frame a reassuring bulk, the sidecar empty now, but echoing with Noah's earlier presence, a reminder of what hung in the balance. Grace had texted ahead. The boy was holding steady, drawing more sketches, but whispers from the center hinted at pushback. Paperwork stalled, questions about the Viper's involvement raised like flags in a brewing gale. Ethan's mind replayed Jake's last words in the desert foxhole, gravel in his throat from dust and fear. "Ridge, swear it, we fight for the ones who can't, no shadows left behind." That oath had pulled him from his solitary drifts, but now it demanded he unearth his own buried fractures. They pulled into the aid center's lot as the sun dipped lower, casting the oaks in elongated silhouettes that clawed at the gravel like desperate fingers. Engines cut one by one, the sudden quiet amplifying the crunch of boots and the distant call of a crow wheeling overhead. Olivia met them at the door, her ponytail slightly askew, arms crossed against the chill of impending dusk. "Noah's fine. Coloring even smiled once," she said, voice pitched low. eyes scanning the group for cracks. But the captain called. Wants a clarification meeting tomorrow. Says Victor's got a cousin in county admin, spinning tales of biker interference. Samuel snorted, a sound like distant thunder, but Ethan held up a hand, the leather of his glove creaking. Interference, we're the ones dragging light into his pit. Inside, the centre's common room hummed with subdued activity, soft voices from a group session down the hall, the scent of chamomile tea wafting from a nearby kitchenette. Noah sat at a low table near the window, crayons scattered like fallen leaves. His small frame hunched over a drawing that captured the convoy in bold strokes, bikes roaring under a sky streaked with promise. He looked up as Ethan entered, his face lighting with a mix of relief and lingering wariness, the bruises fading to yellow echoes under the warm lamp glow. "They said you might come back," Noah murmured, pushing the paper forward. Ethan crouched, the floorboards groaning under his weight, and studied the sketch. Serpents and shields, a boy on a sidecar, etching a path through storm clouds. "That's us, kid, holding the line." The words carried the weight of his own son's drawings, long boxed away, stirring an ache that twisted like a wrench in his gut. Grace joined them, her scrubs whispering as she knelt beside Noah, checking his vitals with gentle efficiency. "He's processing," she whispered to Ethan, her breath warm against the room's cooling air. "But the delays, it's like they're building a wall." Jonathan slipped in quietly, his recon already bearing fruit. A murmured update from a contact in the courthouse basement. Falsified reports, a trail leading to Harlan's desk, greased by Victor's old debts. The Vipers gathered in a loose semicircle, the room's beige walls closing in like a council chamber, the faint tick of a wall clock, underscoring the ethical snare tightening. Tyler fiddled with a loose thread on his vest, voice hushed. "If we push too hard, they flip it, make us the villains." William nodded, his deep rumble agreeing. "But we don't fold. Oaths thicker than their ink." Ethan rose, the decision settling like dust after a skid. "We go deeper, tonight. Jonathan, you and Tyler hit the shadows. Quiet, no traces. Samuel, Grace, line up every ally. Vets groups, the shelter network. Olivia, keep Noah shielded. Tell him stories of roads that lead home." The plan wove through the air, a tapestry of loyalty stitched from fragments of trust. As the group dispersed, Ethan lingered with Noah, the boy's hand tentative on his arm. "You carved that SOS like a warrior," Ethan said, voice gravel-soft. "Now we carve the truth." Noah's nod was fierce, a spark in the dimming light, but as Ethan stepped out into the twilight, the phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. Harlan knows your secret, the accident. Pull back or the boy pays." The words hit like a blindside curve, freezing Ethan mid-stride, the gravel biting into his boots. His secret, the foggy night, the swerve that took his son, the whispers of fault he'd buried under miles of highway. How? Victor's reach or Harlan's grudge? Samuel caught his expression, closing the distance with purposeful steps, the air now thick with the earthy promise of rain on the horizon. "What is it?" he asked, hand on Ethan's shoulder, a brother's grip unyielding. Ethan showed him the screen, the message glowing like a taunt in the fading light. Samuel's eyes hardened, but no judgment flickered, only the creed. Stand together. They think they can break us with ghosts, but we ride through 'em. The convoy reformed under the gathering clouds, engines igniting with a defiant growl that scattered the crows. Jonathan and Tyler peeled off first, vanishing into the twilight like scouts into fog, their taillights winking out toward the courthouse's underbelly. The rest followed Ethan, a tighter formation now, wheels humming over cracked pavement as Milford's lights flickered to life, street lamps buzzing like wary sentinels. The wind picked up, carrying the metallic scent of ozone, whipping at their leathers as they veered toward the riverfront, a neutral ground for planning the counterstrike. Ethan's mind raced, the promise evolving, not just for Noah, but to reclaim his own redemption from the wreckage of that lost night. Shadows deepened, the ethical storm brewing with psychological barbs, Harlan's leverage a blade at the throat of their bond. Miles out, under a sky bruised purple, they pulled into an abandoned overlook, the river's murmur a soothing counterpoint to the tension. Bikes circled like wagons, headlights pooling light on the damp grass. Grace arrived separately, her car crunching to a halt. Thermos in hand once more, coffee laced with resolve. "Noah drew you as the leader," she said, passing mugs around, steam curling like unspoken fears. Samuel leaned against his Harley, arms crossed. "We expose Harlan first. Jonathan's digging for the paper trail. If it's tied to Victor, it crumbles the whole mess." But Ethan felt the pull of confession, the weight of his secret threatening to fracture the circle. He met their gazes, the group's quiet faith a mirror to the chosen family Jake had envisioned. "There's more," he began, voice steady against the rising wind. "Years back, my boy. The accident. They blame me still. If Harlan uses it—" The words hung, raw as exposed wire, but Samuel stepped forward, clasping his forearm. "Then we own it together. Oath covers scars, Ridge. Yours, ours." Nods rippled through the group, William's massive hand on his back a pillar of unshakable loyalty. The river lapped below, dark waters reflecting the first stars, a sensory vow of persistence. As Jonathan radioed in, leads on falsified files, a midnight meet confirmed, Ethan exhaled, the burden shared lightning like fog lifting. The Vipers were more than riders. They were the shield against corruption's creep, moral thunder rolling toward climax. But the night deepened, Harlan's threat a psychological echo, promising that the final ride would demand everything, their honor, their secrets, their unbreakable core. Engines revved softly, a prelude to the storm's heart, carrying them forward into the fray. The night air at the river overlook carried the crisp bite of impending rain, mingling with the earthy dampness rising from the water below, where the current whispered secrets against jagged rocks. Ethan's confession hung in the pooled glow of the headlights, the Vipers' faces illuminated like statues in a vigil, Samuel's steady gaze, Jonathan's sharp nod, William's unyielding bulk, a silent vow. The engines ticked softly as they cooled, chrome accents glinting under the emerging stars, a constellation of resolve forged from shared scars. Grace handed out the last of the coffee, its steam curling like fragile hope, while Tyler fiddled with a radio scanner, static crackling faintly in the background. Ethan's secret, the foggy highway, the swerve, the loss of his son, had been a shadow he'd ridden alone, but now it was laid bare, absorbed into the Brotherhood's unbreakable weave. "We end this tonight," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the wind like a blade honed on desert sands. "Harlan's bluffing with ghosts, but we hit with truth. Jonathan, your leads, guide us." Jonathan holstered his phone, the screen's glow fading from his face, replaced by the hawk-like intensity that had saved them in foxholes abroad. "Files confirm it. Harlan's desk, Victor's payoffs rerouted through shell accounts. Midnight meet at the old mill, his cronies handing off evidence to bury Noah's case. We get there first, record it clean." No fists, no fury. The Viper's code demanded poetic justice, exposing rot to the light where it withered. Samuel revved his engine once, a low growl of affirmation, and the convoy stirred to life, tires crunching gravel as they formed up, a steel phalanx slicing into the darkness. The road to the mill wound through Milford's sleeping fringes, past skeletal warehouses and chain-link ghosts, the moon casting silvery paths on the blacktop slick with mist. Ethan led, wind tearing at his beard, the Harley's thrum vibrating through him like a heartbeat reclaiming its rhythm. Flashes of memory assaulted him, the desert promise to Jake, the highway's blur, Noah's carved SOS binding them all in redemption's thread. Samuel flanked right, Grace in her car, trailing with medical kit and recorder, a quiet force amid the roar. The mill loomed ahead, its rusted silos piercing the skyline like forgotten sentinels, the air thick with the musty scent of decay and stagnant water from the adjacent creek. They killed engines at the tree line, boots silent on damp earth, shadows blending with the night as Jonathan signaled the approach. Inside the mill's cavernous shell, faint voices echoed off corroded beams, Harlan's oily timbre negotiating with Victor's cronies, words like "bury the report" and "biker scum" slicing the gloom. Ethan crouched behind a stack of mildewed crates, the woods rot sharp in his nostrils, heart steady as the river's pulse. Jonathan set up the recorder, a small device whirring to life, capturing every damning syllable. Admissions of bribes, threats to Noah's placement, ties to Victor's threats woven into official threads. Grace monitored from the perimeter, her breath fogging the chill air, while Tyler and William held the flanks, eyes scanning for tails. The ethical tension peaked, a psychological vice, Harlan's leverage over Ethan's past a final barb, but the Brotherhood's loyalty blunted it. As the deal concluded, papers exchanged in the dim lantern light, Ethan stepped forward, the floorboards creaking like a judge's gavel. "Captain," he called, voice echoing with measured thunder, the vipers emerging like specters from the dark. Harlan spun, face paling under the lantern's flicker, his suit rumpled like discarded lies. The cronies froze, hands twitching toward hidden steel, but Samuel's massive form blocked the exit, a wall of quiet menace. "This ends here," Ethan continued, holding up the recorder, its red light blinking accusation. "Your strings, Victor's dirt, all on tape, for the boy, for the innocent you swore to protect." Harlan's eyes darted, calculating escapes, but Jonathan's calm reveal of the files, printouts from the courthouse shadows, sealed the trap. "It's over," Jonathan said, voice silk over iron. "Truth rides louder than your badges." The captain deflated, sputtering denials that crumbled like wet ash as Grace called it in. Anonymous tip to internal affairs, her medic's credentials lending weight without a trace back to the Vipers. Patrol cars converged minutes later, lights pulsing blue against the mill's rust, officers swarming with the precision of unraveling knots. Harlan was cuffed amid protests, his cronies spilling names in a desperate bid for leniency, the web collapsing under its own weight. No shots fired, no blood spilled, justice unfolded in the cold clarity of evidence, a moral dawn breaking through the night. Ethan watched from the tree line as they were loaded up, the creek's murmur washing away the tension, the air now laced with the clean scent of rain, finally falling in soft patters. By pre-dawn, the convoy rolled back to the aid center, engines hushed to respect the sleeping town, the first light gilding their leathers like medals of honor. Noah waited at the window, sketchbook in hand, his face breaking into a genuine smile as Ethan dismounted. Olivia opened the door, her eyes bright with quiet triumph. "It's done," she said, embracing Grace. "Charges filed, Harlan's out, Victor's facing the full weight. Noah's placement, foster family with ties to our network, safe roads ahead." The boy ran forward, wrapping arms around Ethan's waist, the leather of his vest warm from the ride. "You came back?" Noah whispered, echoing the promise that had started it all. Ethan knelt, the rain-damp gravel cool under his knees, and ruffled the boy's hair. "Always, kid. Chosen family doesn't fade." The vipers gathered on the lot, the sun cresting fully now, bathing them in gold that chased away the last shadows. Samuel clasped forearms all around, his laugh booming like thunder receding. "For Jake, for the oath." Jonathan pocketed the recorder, evidence handed off cleanly. Tyler revved his bike in celebration, the engine song a hymn of solidarity. William lifted Noah onto his shoulders for a moment, the boy's laughter a rare, pure note. Grace and Olivia shared a nod, women of quiet steel mending what men broke. Ethan's redemption settled deep. The accident's ghost quieted by this act, not erasing loss, but honoring it through sacrifice. The carved SOS had ignited a legacy, promises enduring, loyalty's fire against corruption's chill, justice as the truest ride. As the crew mounted up one last time, engines harmonizing in farewell, Noah waved from the steps, his sketch clutched tight, a map of roads untaken, horizons wide. Ethan lingered a beat, the wind carrying the river's fresh breath, before throttling forward. The convoy dispersed into the morning, threads of the iron vipers weaving stronger, guardians of the voiceless. Milford awoke to headlines of cleaned ledgers, but for them, victory was in the quiet. A boy safe, a man whole. Honor's legacy roaring on. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of grit, grace, and unbreakable bonds moved you, hit subscribe and join the convoy for more stories that honor the heart of the road.